I'm Margaret Ostrander, and my birthday is December 19th, 1925. Tuesday, I'll be 98 years young.
Oh my gosh, you did so well.
Well, thank you.
December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Do you remember that day?
December 7th, 1941, a day of infamy. Even as Japanese diplomats were conferring with Secretary of State Hull on peace measures, Nipponese planes were swooping down on Pearl Harbor. Nearly 3,000 casualties added to the catastrophe. Within hours, the United States declared war.
Oh, I do.
What do you remember about it?
That everybody was so excited, and I heard the president on the radio, but I don't remember too much else about it. I had to take a year off because my mother had cancer for the first time, and so I took not a year, a semester off. And so when I graduated, it was in January rather than 43. I graduated in January of 44. And then I went from there to Washington, D.C., and worked as the chief clerk of the Naval Gun Factory.
During the war?
During the war.
Let me ask about your job. What was that job?
I went down as a stenographer, but the chief clerk wanted me for his private secretary, so that's what I did.
What was their role?
Well, I had to take new recruits for the employment there, and he was chief clerk, so he had a lot of jobs to do. One of the other girls that he chose to be his private girls, and I would go to conferences with him and take shorthand, and didn't have any tapes or anything like that in those days. We had to take shorthand. So Annie and I would take them, and then we'd get together, and what she didn't get, I got, and what I didn't get, she got. So we were able to do it that way. But we were both bonded, so that we did confidential material. The admiral at that time was Admiral Richmond. I remember that now.
Yeah. So, what did you happen to see that went on down there? Because this is the end of getting towards the end of the war, but the war is still on.
Yeah, well, just remember, I was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun.
Well, you were single, attractive, and in Washington.
Mm-hmm. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Do you remember when the war ended? You know, in August of 1945, you would have been in Washington.
I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification.
Newsmen rush the president's report to a waiting world. In New York City, as throughout a rejoicing nation and world, vast throngs of grateful, happy people celebrate the end of fighting, the dawn of peace. 2 million New Yorkers jam Times Square. It's official. It's all over. It's total victory.
Was there excitement? Was there...
Oh my gosh. Everybody was dancing in the streets and singing and hooting and hollering. It was really pandemonium.
Yeah.
Really.
So did you stay in Washington long after that?
No, 2 years was my contract.
Okay.
And then I came home, and it was the day after Labor Day, actually. And my mother was volunteering at the Navy Mother's Canteen in the bus terminal. Oh. And I was visiting her there, my first day home. And, excuse me, and I was playing the piano. And in comes this young soldier. And boy, he just loved my piano playing. And we were singing. And we fell in love, both of us, that day.
What was his name?
Merle Ostrander.
Okay. Love at first sight. And this would have been
45.
45, okay.
We were married January 3rd, 1946.
Ah, fantastic.
Spent 73 years together.
Oh, that's fabulous. And he was in the service?
He was in the Army,
Okay.
and of course we had no money. All of my money had gone to my parents or in bonds. So he had been transferred. He was just back from the Battle of the Bulge. And then he was transferred to Camp Swift, Texas, a little town called Bastrop. And I didn't know it then, but there's a county in Bastrop. Anyway, so I cashed in my bonds so I could go with him. He wanted me to go with him. And so I did. That was another experience.
Talk about it.
Well, the first few nights we spent on an army cot in the barracks, and then in what they had a special place for visitors and guests, and that's where we spent our first few days there in Bastrop. And so I went to the Red Cross, and they were going to help me find a place for us, a room or apartment or something, and they did. But I was really amazed when I was walking to the Red Cross. Here comes walking towards me Shirley Weinstein from Jamestown,
I'll be there.
Bastrop, Texas. Her husband was the dentist on the base, Noah Greenbaum.
Wow.
And so that was a surprise. Small world. And we found a room, and Mrs. Moncure let us have a room, and that's where we stayed. He had to go to work days on a bus, and I found a job in a restaurant. I was a waitress. A lot of fun. Anyway, that was the story. Then when we came back, after we came back, he was discharged from Fort Dix. My husband had a lot of trouble. I told you he was in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
Well, he had a lot of trouble with sinus because in January and February he walked across Germany and France and all those. He was in the Battle of the Bulge without winter clothing. They didn't issue them any winter clothing.
Right.
No shoes, no boots. I mean, it's just shoes. And so he always had sinus problems after that. And pneumonia 5 times.
Did he talk much about the war?
Merville,
Yeah.
all the fun times.
Like what? Give me a good story.
Oh, well, he talked one time about his friend, Roy Hales. They needed to find out where the sniper was coming from. So Roy Hales was a nut. It was a real hillbilly from the hills of Tennessee. Anyway, he told about Roy going to the top of the dugout wherever they were, waving his hat to see where the sniper was. And he laughed about that. And then they talked about another time when they were stationed in Germany, Kaiserslautern. They were billeted in an old house, and they didn't have a lot to eat, only army rations. So one time they spotted a goose, and that's another story. Anyway, the goose was belonged to the Burgomeister, and they decided they were going to get that goose and have some meat, and they did. The next day they found out it was a Burgomeister's goose, and everybody was searching for that goose, but they were never going to find it, of course. But then, years later, my son was 22 years in the Air Force. He was stationed at Kaiserslautern, Ramstein Air Force Base, and they use geese for watchdogs, to this day.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Did your husband talk about some of the bad things that happened there during the war?
Not until when we were getting ready to come here. And he told me, I asked him one time if he didn't have any bad times, because all he talked about was the fun he had. He was an up guy. He wasn't down. Anyway, he told me about this one time when they were all, what do they call it, under siege. And his lieutenant was shot, and not in a good way. They hit a bomb or something. Anyway, my husband had to carry his parts to the ambulance under fire. That's the only thing he ever said to me that was about.
What was his role there? Was he
Machine gunner.
machine gunner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I could tell you another story about that.
Sure, please.
He went over on the Queen Mary, and he was a gunner on the tail, on the stern of the boat. And when they came to the area where there were submarines, and there was an alert, and the ship, had to turn real fast. And he almost got knocked off of the end of the stern, but the railing held him. He wasn't supposed to go.